Algorithms, I need to move this thing because otherwise I can't see. Okay. On Algorithm Watch's AI Ethics Global Inventory, to date, 160 different kinds of guidelines have been compiled. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Very few include directives on enforcement, oversight, and compliance mechanisms. Almost all are from North America or Europe. Almost all are ineffective. So why is this the case? Why are things not working? Sorry, I don't know. Let me just go back from my current slide. Okay. Lack of distributed responsibility is one possibility. Lofty ideas coming from outside the tech community. Lack of feeling of moral accountability on the side of software developers because they lack comprehension and knowledge of long-term social consequences. What are the possibilities of abuse given this plethora of guidelines that we have? Luciano Floridi gives us 5 possibilities. There are many others. One is ethics shopping. So there's confusion instead of clear publicly shared actionable guidelines. Which ones should we now follow? Which ones are for private sector companies? Which ones are for small enterprises, and so on? Ethics blue washing, superficial commitment to responsible AI instead of establishing and sharing public, accountable, evidence-based best practices. Ethics lobbying, self-regulation is advocated instead of establishing enforceable ethical and legal norms because it's far easier to say, I'll do stuff in my own company, thank you very much. Ethics dumping, taking your business elsewhere to countries where there are weaker frameworks, legal and ethical frameworks. And then ethics shirking, which is related to blue washing, which is just weak execution of ethical duties instead of establishing clear lines of responsibility. So are there solutions being offered? And what could they be? Yes, there are some on the table. Warnings about the gap between the tech community's reality and lofty AI ethics ideals are really very strongly made. Some of us are working on guidelines to converge onto a small set of principles, and we are hoping maybe that would mitigate the problem. There is this huge explosion in the development of compliance tools and mechanisms, and the tech community really, this is really fantastic work that's being done there. Emphasis on collating best practice examples, encouraging impact assessment, and so on. But it's still not really working. And why is that? I think it's not working because AI ethics is not just a technical or a policy issue, it is a human issue. So what I'm going to suggest is 2 necessary conditions for actionable AI, and then I'll make a suggestion for what the main sufficient condition should be and what the problems with that is or are. So the first necessary condition I suggest is that AI ethics should be approached in a multidisciplinary manner. How would we do that? By focusing, I suggest, on concrete research which includes the tech community. How can that happen? I suggest through the discipline of the ethics of AI, because that discipline already includes the tech community. The second condition, AI ethics should be viewed as a shared and dynamic system. How can we do that? By enabling each AI actor in civil society to take responsibility for their own actions and to hold others accountable for theirs. Fantastic, but how do we do that? I suggest the virtue ethics approach, which allows for shared, adaptable, context-based moral practices. So if we take these 2 conditions into a little bit more detail, in terms of multidisciplinarity, I have one argument that I want to quickly unpack. The discipline, first premise, the discipline of the ethics of AI is multidisciplinary by nature. There's been this huge explosion in this discipline: machine ethics, social robotics, neuroethics, data ethics, information ethics, legal ethics, all kinds of different subdisciplines exploding in this area. And because they concern issues to do with humans, such as consciousness, human agency, morality, personhood, rights, they offer new challenges to the tech community. So there are interesting programming considerations to take into account, which means, second premise, that the technical community is clearly involved in these subdisciplines. They are involved in terms of software developing, robotics, computer engineering, data management, and so on. So the scope of the ethics of AI reflects the potential impact of AI technologies on human societies and political stability in a manner to which the tech community may be more open, as it is more concrete to them, because this discipline already includes them. Thus, if AI ethics, and that's my conclusion, if AI ethics concerns were to be expressed in concrete terms in communication with members of the tech community involved in these subdisciplines, there is a good chance of overcoming feelings of alienation from AI ethics ideals in the tech community, and secondly, of creating moral accountability on the side of the tech community. So the suggestion is that the multidisciplinary nature of the ethics of AI should keep the ideals of AI ethics that is focused on policy making grounded and inclusive of both the technical and the social dimensions. So given then, if we come now to the second condition, which has to do with participation and an adaptive model, I have two arguments. First premise of the first one, given that one of the indicators of the current exponential growth in AI adoption is the increasing readiness to consume AI in all its forms, every member of civil society should also be involved in AI ethics. Secondly, the integration of technology with humans transforms not only human potential, but human characteristics, what it is that we are becoming. Thirdly, technological shifts in human practices may reduce our opportunity for cultivating practical wisdom and moral habituation. Practical wisdom has to do with our moral habits, our virtuous behavior. So first sub-conclusion, we need assurance that we can legitimately trust in humans and their abilities. And this is something that's often left out of the picture. Second sub-argument, first premise, virtue ethics is a lifelong journey of striving to be the most virtuous person one can be. Aristotle did not see virtue as a result of an abstract understanding of what is truly good for us or some justification based on some external notion of whatever it may be. Rather, it is the result of training and a habit based on rational deliberation in each concrete situation. Second premise, AI ethics is an adaptive process, should be an adaptive process, and cannot be thought of or approached in terms of technological solutions only, since it mitigates the political and ethical challenges faced in society at a given time. So disciplinary, geopolitical, economic challenges, both as generators of data, fueling the AI lifecycle on the one hand, and the result of AI applications on the other hand, are diverse and constantly changing. And so is the very technology at issue. So a comprehensive participative, adaptive model of ethics should underpin AI ethics considerations. And that's my second conclusion. So the suggestion is a comprehensive, participative, adaptive model of AI ethics would imply less focus on disciplining AI actors to adhere to ethical guidelines and more focus on positive self-realization of moral responsibilities. It also implies responsible, interconnected participation of all AI actors that is adaptable to advances of AI technology and to social and political contexts. So this will lead to broadening of the scope of action, uncovering of blind spots, promotion of autonomy and freedom, fostering of self-responsibility. So the two necessary conditions I have spoken about for actionable AI, inclusion of the tech community via a multidisciplinary focus based on engagement with the ethics of AI. Secondly, inclusion of civil society and confirmation of the dynamic nature of AI technologies and their impact via a virtue-based adaptive system of ethics. But what would the sufficient condition be? I think here we need a balance in the debate on digital sovereignty. On the one hand, we have government's legislative powers. On the other hand, we have the private sector's creative power and innovative power. And there is a standoff at the moment. The whole talk about transnational corporations, about Facebook and Twitter closing down people's accounts, all of those things are instances of this fight for digital sovereignty. Until we have settled this debate and found some balance, we cannot have sufficient inclusion of government and the private sector on both of them, and we need that. So that, I think, is the sufficient condition. So in this context, trustworthiness becomes a socio-technical concept as it implies respect for every human's dignity, as well as the safety and robustness of technical systems. Trust becomes the benchmark for the social acceptance of AI technologies because there is trust in technology and human actors, which implies there's trust that AI technologies will bring benefits as well as mitigate risk or harms. And trust as the enabler of beneficial AI can actually be appreciated through allowing full AI adoption. So underpinning the socio-technical interpretation of trustworthiness is the concept of AI ethics capital. And the definition that I propose for this concept is that the state-of-the-art AI ethics capital is the state-of-the-art multidisciplinary knowledge, skills, and competencies of individual AI actors that drive their ethical habits and inform a country's AI ethics guidelines, which as such, in their turn, facilitate the creation of personal, social, and economic well-being as a result of the potential of harmonious and ethical coexistence with technology thus created. So we need careful, strong, and rigorous philosophical thinking as a guide towards ethical, beneficial, and trustworthy AI technologies. Why? The systems at issue are not technical systems, but socio-technical systems that have an impact on what it means to be human in the face of the vulnerability of human society to possible harm from AI technologies, the lack of control over our realities as we become immersed in environments created in part by AI technologies, the challenges that our moral abilities, the challenges to our moral abilities and our basic rights, and the hope to maximize the potential of equitable benefits that AI technologies offer humanity. Thank you. And Heather, this is very fun.